You woke up this morning and did something your body still doesn't fully understand. You ate a bowl of cereal or a piece of toast, maybe eggs, maybe a smoothie, maybe nothing at all before rushing out the door. You called it breakfast, but your ancestors never had a word for that. For most of human history, there was no first meal of the day waiting for you at a fixed hour. There was only hunger and the long, uncertain search to end it. This sounds like a small detail. It isn't. Breakfast, as you know it, is one of the youngest habits in the human story, and the way your body responds to food in the morning still carries the fingerprints of a world that had no clocks, no pantries, and no guarantee of eating at all. Think about that for a second. Every morning, without asking, your body begins preparing itself to eat. Insulin sensitivity rises. Cortisol spikes to help you feel alert. Your gut clock, tucked inside cells lining your intestines, starts anticipating food before you've had a single bite. This system evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. Modern breakfast has existed for maybe 200. So what did people actually eat back when eating was not a scheduled event, but a full-time negotiation with survival? Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has spent decades studying this question. His research points to something surprising. Early humans were not primarily meat eaters waking up to hunt buffalo at dawn. They were foragers first. Tubers, roots, nuts, insects, and whatever fruit was in season made up the bulk of daily intake. Meat was valuable but unpredictable. You couldn't count on a kill, you could count on digging. Picture it. Gray light before sunrise. No plates, no table, no ritual, just movement. Walking toward whatever patch of land had fed the group before. Hunger wasn't a scheduled sensation to be addressed at 7 a.m. It was a constant hum, managed in fragments throughout the day. Here's the part that surprises people most. There was no first meal. Eating didn't start the day. It happened whenever food appeared. A cluster of berries at mid-morning, a dug-up root at noon. Marrow cracked from a scavenged bone in the afternoon. Sometimes nothing until the group returned near dusk, exhausted and finally rewarded. This pattern wasn't unique to one region. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, including the Hadza of Tanzania, studied extensively by researcher Frank Marlowe, show a similar rhythm. Meals are opportunistic. Food is shared immediately, often before anyone sits down. There's no concept of breakfast food versus dinner food. Whatever is available gets eaten, regardless of the hour. Why does this matter to you, scrolling through a cereal aisle deciding between Frosted Flakes and granola? Because your body still runs on ancient software, even while your environment has changed completely. The idea of the most important meal of the day is not evolutionary wisdom, it's marketing. In the early 1900s, cereal companies, most famously through campaigns tied to figures like Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, began pushing the idea that a structured, carbohydrate-heavy breakfast was essential for health and moral discipline. Kellogg wasn't just selling cornflakes, he was selling a worldview, one where regulated eating time signified a regulated, civilized life. That idea worked. It worked so well that within a few generations, breakfast became not just common, but mandatory in the cultural imagination. Skipping it felt like a failure of self-care, but your ancestors skipped meals constantly. Skipping wasn't a lifestyle choice. It was simply how food worked. Here's where the science gets strange. Your body's circadian rhythm, the internal clock studied extensively by chronobiologists like Satchidananda Panda, doesn't actually require food at a specific hour to function well. What it responds to is consistency and light exposure, not necessarily a bowl of oatmeal at sunrise. Panda's research on time-restricted eating found that when people eat within a consistent window, regardless of whether that window starts early or late, markers of metabolic health tend to improve. The magic wasn't breakfast, it was rhythm. This reframes everything. The urgency you feel to eat immediately upon waking isn't hardwired ancient instinct. It's a learned cultural habit, reinforced by decades of advertising, school schedules, and workplace routines. Your ancestors' bodies were built for flexibility, for enduring hours, sometimes most of a day, without food, and then eating substantially when food became available. There's an evolutionary reason this flexibility mattered so much. Food scarcity was the default condition, not the exception. A body that panicked without food every 4 hours would not have survived long stretches of scarcity. Instead, human metabolism evolved remarkable adaptability. Fat stores could be mobilized. Hunger signals could be tolerated for extended periods. The system was built for feast and famine, not for 3 predictable meals plus snacks. Consider what an ancient forager's actual first food might have looked like, if you insist on calling it that. Likely something raw, a handful of foraged greens, a wild fig, if in season. Perhaps a scavenged bit of protein from the previous day's kill, cold and unceremonious. No sitting down, no pause. Eating often happened while walking, while working, while watching for danger. There was no separation between mealtime and the rest of life. Eating was woven into the fabric of survival, not carved out as its own event. Compare that to your kitchen this morning. A quiet, private ritual? Perhaps a specific mug, a particular chair, maybe a screen for company. Structured, comfortable, entirely modern. None of this is wrong, but it is worth noticing how much of what feels natural about eating is actually cultural scaffolding, built in just the last century or two. So does that mean breakfast is bad for you? Not necessarily. Some people thrive eating early. Others do better skipping it entirely. A pattern researcher studying intermittent fasting, including work published by Christopherati, have found can offer metabolic benefits for certain individuals. The point isn't that one approach is correct. The point is that neither approach is more natural than the other. Your ancestors didn't eat breakfast because it was healthy. They ate whenever food appeared, because appearance itself was never guaranteed. This is the quiet twist hiding underneath your morning routine. You believe you are obeying your body's needs. In truth, you are obeying a script written by serial executives, industrialized work schedules, and a century of repeated cultural messaging. Your actual biology is far more forgiving, far more adaptable, and far less picky about when the day's first bite happens. Next time you stand in front of the fridge at 7 in the morning, feeling that tug of obligation to eat something, anything, immediately, pause for a moment. That tug isn't ancient wisdom whispering through your genes. It's an echo of a marketing campaign from over 100 years ago, dressed up as instinct. Your ancestors would have found the whole concept strange. Not the eating, the scheduling. The idea that hunger should arrive on command, obediently right after sunrise, day after day, regardless of what your body actually needed in that moment. They didn't have breakfast, they had hunger, and the world's answer to it whenever that answer happened to arrive.